Welcome back, everyone, to Stay in Your Lane. I'm your host, John Mahle. Today, again, we are at FSA 24. Special guest sitting on the couch beside Joe Lombardo, Rebecca Brewster from the American Trucking Research Institute. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for making time for us.
My pleasure. I'm very happy to be here
You
today.
just got here off the plane. We rushed you down here to sit you down on the couch.
I love it. I don't like a dull moment.
You don't like a dull moment. I can see that. So tell us, how are things going at ATRI?
So, life is always busy at ATRI, and I think that's why I've had such a passion for it over the years, and it's a job I've stayed on now 31 years. There is a constantly changing scenario in terms of what research needs to be done in the trucking industry. And I tell, every time I interview a candidate to come to work at ATRI, I say, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to do trucking research for my career. But once you do it, it is so fascinating. I mean, there are just so many different topics, from the environment to human factors to congestion, traffic mobility. I mean,
You just posted the congestion report, didn't you?
We did our bottleneck report.
Yep.
Is that where you rank the top 10 bottlenecks?
Top 100.
Top 100.
And it actually has earned me the nickname Becky Bottleneck. So I wear that proudly. And we do that, and sometimes people think it's a survey. So what do truck drivers say are the worst bottlenecks? But really what it is we're very fortunate at ATRI to work with a data set of truck GPS data. And so we have hundreds of thousands of trucks worth of GPS data that comes into us in real time. These are freight trucks. And we monitor traffic congestion at over 325 locations all over the U.S., at least one in each state. And we take a full calendar year worth of data, and we look at how slowly trucks are operating and how many trucks are impacted. So speed and volume go into this calculation to come up with the 100 worst places to operate a truck.
So who is number one this year?
Number one is the perennial favorite. It's been number one for 6 years in a row. It's at Fort Lee, New Jersey.
By the bridge, right?
By the bridge. So people who aren't familiar with where Fort Lee, New Jersey is, it's the New Jersey side of the George Washington Bridge that connects New York and New Jersey, and it's just a hot mess. It's 6 different roads that come together to a toll bridge. It's going to always have congestion because, remember, volume is one of those metrics. So there's always going to be trucks going into Manhattan to deliver and serve that population.
You can be in a car, and that may be one of the worst for a car anywhere in the country.
It is. I always have to remind the media, because they say, when they interview me about this one, because they say, well, that's traffic caused by trucks. And I'm like, oh, no. It's just that our data comes from trucks. But if the trucks are going that slowly, the cars are going that slowly as well.
So, where was number 2?
Number 2 is in Chicago. Chicago has number 2 and number 3.
See, Joe, always a bridesmaid, Joe.
Always number 2. Windy City coming in second.
Yeah, but you know what? There's a good news story coming out of Chicago. So when we first started doing this, Joe, the Jane Byrne interchange, used to be the Circle interchange, was the number 1 bottleneck for 3 years in a row. At that time, Pat Quinn was governor of Illinois, and Governor Quinn issued a press release and said, we do not want to have the worst truck bottleneck in the country anymore, so we're going to fix that. Now, that was a long time ago. You know that construction's been underway for a long time. But it is for the first time this year out of the top 10.
Okay.
The Byrne interchange came in at number 13 this year. So we're going to put that in the win column.
Yeah, definitely.
So where would we be surprised on your list?
Well, there is a location not too far out of where I live in Atlanta, in Chattanooga, where I-75 and I-24 come together. And people don't think of Chattanooga as a high-density place, but I-75 is a tremendous truck corridor. Coming out of Atlanta and going up to points west and north. And it's just been another challenging location.
You know, I don't know that many people realize how much information goes into the reporting that you do. Just like this, on the truck bottlenecks. Now, understanding what's going on and then fixing it. Fixing road congestion or road bottlenecks and volumes That's not an overnight fix.
No, it's not. And that's, I think, where the real value of that particular analysis comes in, because it gives the people who are in a position to put the resources towards fixing it, it gives them a roadmap. I mean, it really does say, not just this is someplace that people don't like to drive. This is empirical data generating from real-world truck operations, saying here's a place where if you would invest in the infrastructure like they did at the Jane Byrne interchange, you can start to improve truck speeds, car speeds, make it better for everybody.
Make it safer too.
Absolutely.
You're going to help the people. You're going to help the processes. You're going to help the environment. You're going to, how many hours are lost sitting?
We actually have some research on that.
I bet you do. Come sit down with us.
So in a separate but similar analysis we do called our cost of congestion, where we look at, so the bottleneck analysis focuses on 325 locations that we monitor, comes up with the top 100. In the cost of congestion, we look at the entire national highway system, and again look at how slowly trucks are moving because of congestion. 1.27 billion hours of lost productivity. 1.27, I believe, was the most recent one. Billion hours of lost productivity, which is the equivalent, this is the number that really gets me, of 460,000 truck drivers sitting still for an entire year. So you'll hear Bob Costello from the American Trucking Associations talk about a driver shortage, depending on the year, somewhere between 60 and 80,000 over-the-road drivers needed. And because of congestion, we have what equates to 460,000 drivers going nowhere for an entire year. I can't think of a better reason to invest in our infrastructure and start to clear up some of these places.
With the recent Infrastructure Act, you see like a silver lining maybe coming in the future?
It's a great opportunity, but much like we've seen with the Byrne interchange, when you have construction, you're going to have congestion.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of these bottlenecks are going to get attention. The pain is going to get a little worse before it gets better. But ultimately,
just like a remodel,
it's
going to be worse before it gets beautiful.
It is. That's so true.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think that's, unfortunately, that's the way everything is. If you're going to make it better and you're going to tear it up, there's going to be more bottlenecking and more congestion until you're on the other end of it.
No pain, no gain.
Absolutely.
Well, in Chicago, they're used to construction because there's two seasons, winter and construction season. So.
Well, and I live just north of Columbus, Ohio. Our office is in Ohio. And I think as soon as the weather breaks, it's time to redo everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've got a tough spot just south of you. The Brent Spence Bridge has been a top contender for a number of years, particularly when it had a fire on it. And
well, yes.
Part of it got taken out of commission. So.
Yes. The fire was definitely an impact.
It was.
And I know a lot of the traffic got shoved just eastbound, east of that,
right,
to reroute over into Kentucky.
Right, and we see that a lot of times. That's what's so fascinating with this GPS data is we're able to sort of track how these things go. I remember a number of years ago, there was a rock slide on I-40 between at the North Carolina-Tennessee border. Mm-hmm. And the North Carolina DOT was rerouting trucks a different way, obviously, because the I-40 was shut down. What we found with our GPS data, because truck drivers are going to do what they need to do to get the loads delivered, they found a different route that was more efficient for them. So the DOT actually, using our data, said, okay, that's where the truck should be going, because obviously it's working better for the drivers.
Well, and I think, from throughout every catastrophe or every struggle, there's a value if you look for it. So what else has ATRI been doing, and what other numbers do you have cooked up for us?
Well, we've been focused a lot lately on the administration's push to move, and states' push to move vehicles, cars and trucks, to battery electric vehicles, zero-emission vehicles. And what does that mean for the trucking industry? And is the nation ready for a battery electric future? And we've identified a number of challenges specific to the trucking industry, because that's what our focus is on. just the sufficiency of the grid in the country. So if tomorrow we flipped a switch and every single vehicle was battery electric, cars and trucks, it would require more than 40% of the nation's current electricity generation to power those vehicles. Depending on what state you're in, that number goes up even higher. So California, the state that's leading this charge, it would require over 57% of their current electricity generation to power all their vehicles.
How about to manufacture them?
Absolutely. And the batteries, I mean, you know, the weight of the batteries needed to get any kind of range so that you could operate more than just locally makes the vehicle so heavy that you have to give up cargo space. So,
Oh, yes, a lot.
So the
8,000 pounds of battery,
right.
isn't it?
So the Federal Highway Administration isn't going to suddenly say you can have a truck that's more than 80,000 pounds.
Well, our infrastructure can't handle that.
It's not prepared for it. I mean, there are just a whole host of things. And then my soapbox issue is always the lack of available truck parking. To put a charger at every one of the current existing truck parking spaces, $35 billion just out of the starting gate to put a charger at each one of those. And anyone who's driven around this country knows that trucks are parking in places other than truck parking spaces because there aren't enough of them. One parking space for every 11 truck drivers. So we'd have to have chargers other places.
Oh, they'd have to be everywhere you turn.
They would. And, you know, what people don't understand is in the trucking industry, we operate under hours of service rules. And we have an electronic logging device in every single truck to monitor our compliance with those hours of service rules. You pull up to a charger, you plug your truck in, it might be done in a couple hours, but you're not going to move your truck until you've had your mandated 8 hours of rest. And you don't particularly care how many people are lined up behind you to charge their truck. You can't move or you're out of compliance. So it's a tricky path forward.
Well, I think Andrew Boyle has shared a lot of common sense approach, but I think there's probably a niche market for it in our industry.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's overall yet.
No, it's not. And I think, you know, it was the same with autonomous vehicles, which we've done research on as well. The trucking industry is not a one-size-fits-all industry.
No.
But you think about operating, for instance, within a port facility, battery electric, autonomous vehicles make a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
If you're just shuttling containers around within a port facility, that seems to make a lot of sense. The duty cycle is very easy to go charge. Even the autonomous driverless vehicle makes sense there.
Continue watching on the next episode of the Stay in Your Lane podcast.